If you told me in 2021 that the newest 3D Sonic game would not only be solid at launch, but would continue to see new updates over the course of a year that added new abilities, stories, modes, and characters, all for free, I wouldn't have believed you. I don't think anyone would have believed you. Hell, I still don't believe you. But seriously, this game has changed so much in the past year, and it changed for the better. There would be no point in going over every change that has been made. I already made 2 videos for each update that goes into extensive detail, so I haven't left any stone unturned. If you haven't watched those already, then...
well, what the hell?
But now we have the biggest update yet. Update 3, The Final Horizon. The one that we have been waiting for so long. What does this update add to the game? And how do the new characters play? And where does the story lead us from here? Let's jump into it right now. So, since release, Sonic Frontiers has been fixed a lot. They added a lot more to do, they updated Sonic's moveset to be more exhilarating, and they made quality of life changes to make the experience more palatable. But there was always that one flaw that this game had that plagued it since its release: the ending. As mentioned in my original review, I did not like the ending of this game. By the time we got to Island 5 and we were tasked with doing the same thing that we've been doing for a 4th time, I felt severe fatigue, made worse by an unfulfilling boss fight against Supreme that goes down way too easy for that point in the game, and the true final boss that has great music, but the fight was so underwhelming compared to the other Titans, and was a completely different gameplay style that didn't feel very Sonic-like. And after all that, the story just kind of ended on a sad note. Sage dies for like 5 minutes. No one on Sonic's side had any reaction to the fact that she sacrificed herself for them, and in the end, it didn't matter, because after the credits, Eggman brings her back anyways. Damn, move over Shadow. Sage didn't need to wait a whole game to come back, she just needed a credit sequence. But now we have Update 3, which its main purpose is to specifically address all of this and then some. So let's start with the story and cover everything. When you get to Island 5, you are now greeted with a giant ring just to your right. This portal allows you to play through the new story on the island. If you decide not to jump through the ring, you will just play through Island 5 as it was in the base game. But if you do decide to jump through the ring, you are now greeted by Sage, who tells you that out of all the probabilities of success she calculated, there was one that has such a small chance of working that she didn't even consider it before. This plan involves Sage reversing Sonic's friends for being in cyberspace to suppress Sonic's cyber corruption, which in turn would also cause Sonic to be re-corrupted. But Sage can stabilize his cyber corruption for a short time while his friends seek out the Chaos Emeralds for them. While this happens, Sage would guide Sonic through trials, which would allow him to convert his cyber corruption into power that he can ultimately use to properly defeat the end. The only caveat, according to Sage, is that these trials are really hard. But I mean, I've been playing this game since release, so really, how hard can it be?
No! I know it's hard! I'm trying to practice!
And just like that, you take control of Sonic's friends in a mainline 3D Sonic game for the first time since Sonic 06, which was 17 years ago, Jesus Christ. And no, I don't count Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric. Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric isn't even a Sonic game. We jump to Amy, whose main goal is to find the Chaos Emeralds. But it's not as easy as going to them in the vaults, as they were hidden by the Coco because the enemy infested the island and are using their technology against them. So to find them, she uses her insight from her fortune cards and by asking Coco for help in locating the emeralds. Once she finds one, she isn't able to grab it right away because of some barrier. Then we jump to Knuckles. Since the Ancient's tech is being used to hide the emeralds, Knuckles starts by hunting down their tech and destroying them to weaken the signal. After finding an emerald, he is also unable to grab it due to a barrier. Then we jump to Tails, whose main goal is to disable the barrier, and to do this he hacks a few of the Coco devices around the island. And just like that, all 3 characters are now able to obtain the Chaos Emeralds each, all before being locked out of the system again. Meanwhile, we jump back to Sonic, who is tasked by Sage to climb the 4 memorial towers put there for the pilots and the Titans who gave their lives to save the world. By climbing them, he will have to complete their trials to gain control over the cyber corruption. Of course, when he gets to them, they aren't really thrilled to see him at first since he destroyed their Titans and released the end by disabling the 6 final seals on Island 4. Well, this is awkward. Of course, after completing their trials, he earns their respect and blessings to defeat what killed them. Now we jump back to the other characters. By now, the end is beginning to corrupt everything on the island, including the Coco. So they set off to do more of what they did before, Knuckles weakening the barrier holding the emeralds by destroying their tech, and Tails breaking them free by hacking into cyberspace. Amy, on the other hand, tasks herself with saving the Coco, as they may be essential to their plans. Things start to go awry though, as all the characters begin to be corrupted, much like Sonic was before. Regardless though, they push through and obtain another set of Chaos Emeralds. Back to Sonic, he goes to the final tower to meet up with someone called the Master King, who was the leader of the Ancients and who was able to turn his cyber corruption into a new power. By completing another set of challenges and by destroying all the Titans using only perfect parry, Sonic gains this new power, but is warned it can leave him entirely if he becomes too reckless with it. With all of the trials completed and the new power obtained, Sonic goes to confront the end. With the help of his friends and Eggman, he gets all of the Chaos Emeralds and transforms into Super Sonic. Unlike the base game, the End now directly controls the Supreme Titan as an avatar. Sonic, utilizing his new power and becoming Super Sonic 2, can now perfect parry and use it to take on the Titan. With the help of Sonic's friends, Sage and Eggman, they take the Titan's gun and take aim, with Sonic himself being the bullet, getting serious Sonic X vibes. Before being launched at the end by Eggman, Sonic decides to go all out with his corrupted power, becoming Cyber Super Sonic. Or that's what I think his name is. I have no idea what his official name is. With Cyber Super Sonic, they destroy him with one fatal blow as Sonic destroys both the Titan and the End by flying right through them. The End explodes with a banged up Super Sonic now falling back to Earth. Right before Sonic hits the ground, his friends catch him. Never mind. He falls down, but in the end is just fine. Everyone is saved from their cyber corruption, with everyone laughing and hugging. With the world saved and no sacrifice needed by Sage this time, she is now able to go home with Eggman, with Sonic and his friends now able to safely leave the islands off to new adventures. And that's the new story for the Final Horizons update. And wow, what a complete 180 compared to what we had in the base game, which is probably better labeled as the bad ending compared to this. All the new dialogue is pretty good, and even getting more insight into the story is always a treat. I love how they took this opportunity to answer some lingering questions in some of the optional cutscenes, like explaining the meaning of this symbol that we've been seeing since the first trailer of the damn game. Hell, they even explained the rocks, which were apparently stacked like this because it was a game with the Ancients to see who could stack them the highest? In other words, Jenga.
What?
I also love how they just completely gave up on explaining the pinball on Chaos Island. They essentially said it was a playful idea from the developers. Regarding the main story though, it's nothing too crazy, but it is fun to see them use the palettes from the Titans in the main story more. This is something I felt we needed more of in the base game because I wanted to know a ton more about them. I will say though, I am disappointed that they didn't go into detail about how Chaos came to be from the Ancients. I still feel like that's a huge lore drop just waiting to happen. Hopefully that's something they can explain in a future title though. With the new story out of the way, let's go into the gameplay, starting with Sonic's friends. To start, it should be mentioned that all of them control very similarly to Sonic, which is how it should be. That's how it is in the classic games, and that's why I like playing as Tails and Knuckles in Sonic Adventure. Amy was a bit slow for my liking. Thankfully here they all have the same base speed as Sonic, which doesn't slow down the pace of the game, and I like that this game treats all the characters the same way. Starting out, everyone can jump, double jump, and boost to keep the game's pace consistent. There are also a few moves everyone is able to unlock via the skill tree, like the side loop, spin dash, and parry. I wish I could say everyone can also homing attack, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Now let's get into the unique stuff, starting with Amy. In terms of mobility, she can now do something called the card float, which acts kind of like a triple jump with the ability to slowly float back down. She also has the ability to do something called the high card jump, which when unlocked can be accomplished by stomping, which allows her to go really high into the air using a bit of acrobatics, very similar to her movements in Sonic Adventure 1. But unlike Sonic Adventure 1, Amy's vertical movement in this is insane. With all the moves I've just mentioned, you can chain these together to go insanely high up. So if you do the high card jump after a stomp, followed by a double jump and then a card float, you can get to really high places, and I really like it. No joke, I really like playing as Amy in this. Her movement and her ability to jump really high is actually really fun to play as, and I like this approach with her being very acrobatic. Oh, look, a ninja enemy's down there. Let's try to fight it with Amy and see how much the difficulty has changed, as well as their combat ability. Well, shit. Yeah, it's worth noting that once you spawn with any of the new characters, you are pretty much completely defenseless with no real way to fight anything until you unlock more of the skill tree. Made even worse that your attack and defense stats are completely reset for each character. And with the increased difficulty of these enemies, it is damn near imperative that you avoid any and all enemies when you start out at all costs, because you will get your ass kicked. Master Ninja Plus. So she has a homing attack. Hey! Speaking of attacks, what does Amy have in her arsenal? Well, of course, if you all know Amy, you know how she really deals the damage. She can always rely on her classic handy-dandy cards. Yeah, her classic fortune cards as her main attack. And once you unlock more of her attack, you can start to spin around to attack enemies using her cards. Okay, we gotta talk about this. Is anyone else finding this really weird how they are just leaning super hard into this whole tarot card thing for Amy? Don't get me wrong, I don't hate that they're there. I mean, they were a small part of her character since her inception, and seeing them return in the opening of Sonic CD and Origins makes sense. As well as her pulling them out in the story to get some insight on where to get the Chaos Emeralds. That's a cool comeback, and it feels like it's a fitting application for them. But the reality is, we have gone almost 30 years without them ever being mentioned or seen in any mainline Sonic game. Now they are everywhere, and it just feels a tad forced. Again, I don't hate that they're there, but I do feel like how they are implemented is important. Seriously, this spin attack should have been her hammer. I mean, this entire move is a direct callback to her moveset in Sonic Adventure 1. Hell, she even gets dizzy the same way she did back in the day. So the omission of her hammer over the cards does feel like a bit of an odd and forced choice. But okay, if her main attack is cards, then how does her hammer get integrated? Well, not only can every character side loop, but they also have a unique way to pull off a quick side loop of sorts. For Amy, she has something called the Psy Hammer. That is great for taking down enemies for a short time and passing through puzzles that requires the quick side loop. I also like that you can activate this move in midair. Along with the side loop, every character also has the ability to parry, with Amy utilizing her hammer for that as well. I do think that it's cool that the parry here also has a secondary effect on the enemies, like the poison parry that reduces an enemy's health for a short time. Secondary effects like this in combat was something that I solely missed in the original game, and it was something I mentioned that I wish we had more of, so it's great to see that they're playing with stuff like this, and hopefully for future games, we could see this stuff return in combat. As mentioned before, she has the ability to stomp, but she also has a new move called the multi-lock, which buffs her homing attack to lock onto multiple targets all at once. I think stuff like this is super cool, and I also like how they utilize this skill for certain platforming challenges. Now, what about having a max ring count move? With Sonic, he had this cool electric effect and was able to boost even faster. Do these characters have something similar? Well, yes. With Amy, you can unlock the card spin boost, and when you get max rings, Amy will ride her hammer like a witch riding on a broomstick. This is a real game! This is so bizarre. Cool, but bizarre. Maybe I'm looking too hard into this, but is this because of the whole tarot card thing again? And it being connected to witchcraft? If so, again, I think we're leaning way too hard into that. I mean, they literally have her being a witch! Alrighty, now let's move on to Knuckles. Just like in the past games, the first thing you're going to want to do is to climb walls. But in this DLC, you are only able to climb select walls. Now, I understand that this could be seen as a disappointment to some, and I won't lie, I agree. It does suck that you can't just climb any wall I see. That was a huge reason I liked his gameplay in Adventure and Adventure 2. But I will give them a pass on this one. Look, I'll go into more depth on this later, but clearly this DLC wasn't planned when they were originally making this game. I'm sure they're doing what they can in the confinements of what they have in Frontiers with the time that they have, but I do agree this is disappointing. Custom coding specific walls to be climbable only with Knuckles probably would have been a huge endeavor to program for a free DLC. While I expected this shortcut approach in this game, it doesn't really excuse it. Regarding the shortcut approach though, these climbable walls do have their fair share of problems. These climbable walls behave pretty much the same as how Sonic behaves when he climbs them, but that also means it has the same properties as Sonic, where if you so much as touch your toe on another wall or corner in an odd way, you will just slide down awkwardly and you'll fall off if you don't save yourself. In short, this happens way too often and it makes me want to pull my hair out, especially because some puzzles require very specific movements in very tight spaces, and it is very easy to keep falling off. Not to mention, because of these climbable walls having the same properties as before, it can look a bit odd at certain angles. Okay. What? Knuckles, you don't need to climb this.
Knuckles, that's a little extra. You can calm down.
I'm angry! I'm angry! Knuckles also has the ability to glide, which is awesome, but man do I have some nitpicks. First off, you can't just immediately glide. For some reason, Knuckles does this very odd transition animation before gliding that freezes him in place for a solid second, and every single time he does this, a part of me dies inside. I hate when games have transition animations that stop your movements. I'm sorry, but it is my #1 pet peeve in video games. I would much rather he just jumps into a glide right away to keep the flow going. I'll just wait for a mod to fix it. My second pet peeve though is with the glide itself. Usually with Knuckles' glide in Adventure, the longer you glide, the faster you go. But here, you are stuck at a consistent, steady pace. Now, that's honestly not a big problem. My big problem is his turn radius because, oh my god, he turns like a truck! Hell, I can't even say that. The gun truck has a better turn radius than this guy. He turns like a goddamn tank on butter! And that's just one problem. For some reason, and please tell me if I'm wrong, and tell me if you guys had this experience too, whenever I have Knuckles facing the camera, his control just gets all out of whack and I feel like I lose almost all control of where I'm going. Hell, there are times where I do a 180 in the air with Knuckles to turn around, and Knuckles, I swear to god, will just get a mind of his own. I'll hold left and he'll just keep turning right at times. I believe this might have something to do with maybe the camera movements or something affecting him while he's flying. I don't know, but this happened a lot in the game, and this never happened to me in any other Sonic game whenever I play as Knuckles, so there's definitely something wrong with his mid-air controls that I hope they improve in future titles. Now let's talk about his combat. Starting out like Amy, you have no way of really attacking. Hell, you can't even throw a punch. But once you unlock the combo attack, you can start to throw close-range fiery punches. The only thing I don't like about it though, is that the punches are tied to the same button as the homing attack. So if there's an enemy, you have to homing attack them first before you can start punching. And I'm not sure how I really feel about that. I kind of wish they were just simply tied to a different button so you didn't have to do this. I'd like to be able to punch freely at enemies in any direction without having to be forced to homing attack first, because as a result, you are kind of locked in a specific location every time you attack them. I know having the homing attack is essential for platforming in this game though, because of how it's designed, so I do understand why they had to give him the homing attack, but if the past games handled it better, then the past games handled it better. And that's all I could really say. There are a few other attacks that Knuckles brings to the table, like his Heat Stomp, which is essentially a ground pound, and the Drill attack that looks okay, but Knuckles looks like a damn red ice cream cone. Actually, it looks kind of delicious now. Also, this drill attack returns when you upgrade it enough and you get the drill spin boost, which turns him into a drill whenever you boost that can run into any enemies, which is pretty cool. His quick side look move is also pretty cool, called the side knuckle, which quickly can be utilized for enemies and challenges alike, as well as his break parry that can reduce enemy defenses for a short time. In terms of his max rings ability, Knuckles can glide indefinitely, which in other words, means he can fly, which is a nice way to get to the island and get to things faster. Finally, we have Tails. What does the yellow fox have up his sleeve? Well, in terms of mobility, the most important feature for Tails is his Sonic 06 running animation. It's his ability to fly, and in this game, it works very similarly to how it worked in Sonic Adventure. But there are a few differences. For one, like Knuckles, Tails has an animation that plays right before he takes flight, but unlike Knuckles' animation, this one doesn't really halt you in the same way that the Knuckles one does. In fact, it kind of acts like a buffer right before you take off vertically, and I kind of like it. I also think the animation is really well made. It's also extremely useful to stop myself from a downward fall. His flight isn't infinite, of course. Like other games, he gets tired after flying for a while. But this game by far is the furthest you can fly before that happens. I do wish his flight did have a bit more verticality like it did in Sonic Adventure. In this game, you do go up pretty high, but then Tails is capped at a certain height. I feel like it would have been better to have him slowly continue to fly upward vertically while you're moving. If you wanted to move downward, you can simply just let go of the flight button, like in Sonic Adventure. There were a number of times where I was just shy of the ledge of a platform I wanted to get up to because Tails doesn't move vertically enough. It is cool to see his flight rings from Sonic Adventure make a return in HD. Kind of makes me want to remake for Adventure or something. I didn't say that, who said that? What an asshole! In terms of basic movements, as mentioned before with the other characters, Tails has the usual like the double jump and the boost. But there is one massive thing that is different from all the other characters, and that is, Tails doesn't have a homing attack. Yep, no homing attack. Now, you might think to yourself, that must be a good thing, right? I mean, I didn't really like the force homing attack in Knuckles right before punching. This must be a positive, right? Nope, not even a little bit. First off, like I mentioned with Knuckles having the homing attack right before the punch, I understood why they needed to keep it because the level design in Frontiers requires it a lot of the time. Frontiers' main thing that it loves to do to you is throw you right above a pit, and I'll go more in depth on this later, but the homing attack did a good job at saving me from those pits countless times. Now with Tails, that sense of security is gone. You may think, well, that's where his flight comes in, right? But with the vertical height limit thing I mentioned earlier, this isn't a guarantee. On top of that, the homing attack in Frontiers is used very often, not just for saving myself, but also to home in on springs, switches, and levers to bring you to higher ground. Now with Tails, you have to manually bring him to whatever you want to interact with. Usually, I wouldn't mind this if the world design and the character movements were made for it. But in this game, it's clearly not. So it does feel a little awkward. Not the end of the world, I know this is a nitpick, but I think in the end, the whole thing comes down to the game's design. It simply wasn't designed for this type of movement, and I wish it was, I honestly do. Again, the result of the DLC not really being planned earlier on. But okay, he doesn't have the homing attack. What attack does he have that replaces it? What the hell was that? Wrenches? He throws wrenches? That's his main attack? What about his, I don't know, tails? Wrenches. He has all of his gadgets and his tails at his disposal, and he chose, come by my workshop, see what happens. Wrenches. First off, this throwing animation is hilariously awful, and the fact that you can spam this attack with the unlimited wrenches makes it even more hilarious. I'm sorry. I just don't understand. Why take away the homing attack, which gives us the ability to attack enemies accurately, when you're just going to give us another attack that homes in automatically for us? If you replace the homing attack with, say, a Tails Whip like in Adventure, which gives us the ability to attack enemies freely, this would make more sense. But this new move just leaves me asking questions. And if I'm quite honest, I just straight up don't use this move against enemies. Against boxes and the such and getting past challenges, yeah, that makes sense. But against enemies, I just straight up don't find this effective at all. Even after upgrading it, which allows you to throw multiple wrenches at once and it spins in the air, I still don't see it doing a whole lot of damage. I mean, they'll hurt if you throw them hard enough. But it's not all bad with Tails. He does have a number of gadgets at his disposal, like the Spike Stomp, which utilizes a pile bunker, a spring for parrying, and the quick Psy Loop called the Psy Blaster, that unlike all the other characters, shoots outward like a projectile. That's right, be careful, because now Tails is packing heat. I do want to comment on the level design for Tails real quick. There is so many sections built for him. So many intricate designs built to really challenge you in your ability to fly. A good amount of it requires skill and thought out gameplay to reach the end, and I really like it. Or all that noise and just fly straight to the end and break any and all challenge. Yep, let's talk about this absolute insane inclusion, because I could not go on much longer not talking about it. For Tails, you can unlock his iconic Cyclone from Sonic Adventure 2 and use it at max rings. This is a legit plane. First off, the controls are inverted, thank God, and you could even
Do a barrel roll.
This is all tied to your boost gauge, of course, so you know what that means. Just make an infinity symbol and oh my God! They just didn't care. You could just fly as far as you want. This isn't a cheat. This is a legit feature. Make sure you don't stomp from this height though.
Hack the planet.
Oh God.
Where we landed, boys? Where we landed, boys?
What? What just happened? Why did it go to back? Oh! I thought I died! Now, as great as this is, like I mentioned, once you unlock this, any and all tail sections that aren't indoors are essentially void. You can just simply fly to the end of them, which I guess is your reward for unlocking the plane, but it is crazy that there isn't a limit to this. Now, the Cyclone is a great way to get around, but it also acts as an attack, as you can unlock the Cyclone Cannon. But I won't lie, I feel like almost all the enemies in this update don't really open themselves up long enough for you to properly utilize this skill. Every single time I try to pull this thing out, I take a hit before it even starts to fire. Regardless, it is there and it's super cool. And that pretty much covers all the new characters in this part of the update. Obviously, there are some really good ideas for them and a lot of cool inclusions, but you can tell some ideas were half-baked. And while I do think this is simply because they haven't been really playable in so long, I do also think it's a result of them being included in a game that, again, really wasn't designed for this type of stuff. I mean, if it wasn't already obvious enough, almost every character section added to the map is made using stock assets like walls and boxes, which also have horrendous, and I mean horrendous pop-in. How the f are we getting there? This shit's in space. Oh, the pop-in. Never mind. And this is made even worse when you're flying in the cyclone, because you could just be flying freely and then BAM! An entire wall section just spawned in front of your f***ing face.
Yeah, there's been nothing with the towers and...
What the f***? Sadly though, there are 3 glaring issues that all the characters have that I haven't addressed yet. First off, their controls. You may think your controls you have with Sonic would simply carry over to these characters when you switch to them. But oh man, you could not be more wrong. In short, all the characters' movements in this game are bugged. You heard that right. The character movements are completely bugged. More specifically, their deceleration setting. For some reason, all the characters have their own deceleration rate, meaning it doesn't matter that you set your deceleration rate to 99%, Amy will still move a few yards before she stops. And you guys know me, you guys may think that's a good thing, and I would usually agree. Again, I like my momentum. But the problem stems from the level design that requires very specific jumps to be made on very tiny platforms and boxes over pits, so having a high deceleration rate is preferred. Now, you're not completely out of luck, thankfully. You can fix this by setting your deceleration rate to 100%, meaning the characters will just stop on a dime whenever you stop holding any direction. But that doesn't excuse the very glaring bug that there's no in-between option. It's either on or off. That's really baffling to me, and I would be surprised if this really did go unnoticed by the team. The second issue I have is the ability to easily switch between characters. To switch characters, you need to go to the Master King on top of this large tower that I'll go into in a moment, but you have to go to the specific location to swap. There is no simple menu option and no simple combination to swap characters. Why? If only there was a Sonic game you could have taken inspiration from to get this right. Seriously though, what the hell? This is something modders addressed day one, so I know this could have been done super easily, but for some reason it just wasn't added. Was this really not something they thought about during development? In fact, throughout the whole island, you will see sections for other characters as you play. So for example, let's say you're playing as Knuckles, and you find a Coco that only Amy can collect. Well, instead of being able to swap on the spot and collect it as Amy, you will need to leave it, run across the whole damn island to go to the top of this very tower, go to the Master King, swap to Amy, and run all the way back to collect that item. Does this sound familiar? My third problem, these characters are all locked to just Island 5. You can't select them on any other island, and it just feels a bit unnecessary. Even if the other islands don't have sections specifically designed for them, they probably would have worked just fine as they are, since they are essentially Sonic clones with their own unique abilities. So it does seem odd to just have them locked here. Overall though, after everything I mentioned, I think this is all still a positive, and they overall succeeded in bringing these characters to Frontiers. There isn't any character I hate playing, and they all bring something unique to the table in terms of abilities, while also maintaining the fast nature you come to expect in a Sonic game. This isn't perfect obviously, and there is some serious need to polish this either in another update, or especially for the next title. There is a lot of things I'm not going to harp on too much, simply because this is a free DLC at the end of the day, and like I mentioned from the start, this DLC clearly wasn't planned from the beginning. This is a good first attempt though, and after getting some serious feedback and proper polish after this update, I hope we get to see these characters get properly included in a future 3D game that is designed with them in mind from the start. Now, everything I talked about so far was only like half the DLC. We still have a whole other side with Sonic to talk about, so let's jump right in. First, let's talk about the new objective Sonic must face. Unlike before, you no longer have to collect keys. Instead, your goal is to find Lookout Coco. Gather enough of them and you unlock a tower that has the trial that you must complete. You can unlock these Coco in a number of ways. You can find them around the map by side looping or by completing new challenges in the new cyberspace stages. Though I do use the word new lightly, as these are the same maps as before, this time with a ton of random boxes and assets to make new pathways and such, and to make them feel different. In fact, a good amount of the level design now encourages the new spin dash, and I really do like that. But I do feel like it does get overused at times, and I feel like over half the time I'm in these levels, I'm just kind of flying over everything rather than actually playing in them. They also play with a lot of new camera techniques and such that really spice things up, and I really do like it, for example with the loops. It isn't just the level design that's different, there is a good number of new challenges in these that range from cool to what the f***. Some challenges have you recollecting some returning items from Sonic Forces, like these numbered rings and moon medals. There's also some brand new things you can collect, like flickies, and returning them to safety, which can be a lot easier said than done. We are saving flickies now.
That's so cute.
What the f? I'm done.
I
hate this.
Murdered
That rule.
You should.
I landed on the box. It caused the slipping animation, which made me let go of the flicky. That wasn't even my fault. Some of them involve avoiding invisible mines, which is just so random.
You know what? You're right.
That killed you! You didn't have any rings, no.
Chat, what the f was that? And random is the name of the game in these. Some levels give you a new boost called the Rocket Boost, which is essentially just a faster boost that can now plow through enemies like in the past boost games. Another level has a random... I don't even know what this is. It's literally acting like Sonic is like a car driving on manual, so the longer you boost uninterrupted, the faster you go. Kind of like going up a gear. But I feel like this level design doesn't really go good with this mechanic. You're going to be forced to jump at times. And other levels just randomly have moon gravity and an excessive amount of Honda Civic vans. Like, what the hell is going on here? I never thought they would ever... What the f*** is this?
You guys ever play Cluster
Wait,
Truck?
I have moon gravity? Guys, as this update continues, I've realized they're just f***ing with us. I appreciate what they're trying to do with some of these cyberspace levels, but ideas do come across as half-baked, and the use of random assets to add to the level does come off as a bit cheap. The best way I can describe it is that the random asset usage in these levels, with a bunch of boxes, rails, cars, and flat walls, gives this a fan-made feel versus an official one coming from Sonic Team. In fact, a lot of this kind of reminds me of the Halo Forge days when I used to play Halo 3 back on the 360, where I would play my friends' levels. Regardless, I am very happy to see that they're playing with different ideas this time around that can be fully fleshed out in future titles properly. I like them incorporating level design for the spin dash, and I hope to see more levels with more hills and curves to incentivize rolling, while also leaving room for coherent level design without just having to fly over everything with the spin dash. And that's all I can really say about the cyberspace stages. The ideas are cool and some of them can really be fun. But in the end, the whole objective is to collect Lookout Cocoa by completing any of the challenges in the levels. But I do want to say, if you don't like any of the new cyberspace levels, which is, by the way, totally understandable, you can simply skip them and still collect plenty of Lookout Cocoa, no problem in the open world. In fact, I think doing this is probably 10 times faster than getting them in the cyberspace stages. I mean that. They are everywhere in the open world. If you see these posts with the blue side loop trail, there is a good 75% chance it's a Lookout Cocoa. So you might as well side loop them every time you see one. Alrighty, now let's cover the towers.
Assholes! This is f***ing bullshit! Who the fuck? No! This is not real! Ah!
If you've been hearing that Update 3 for Sonic Frontiers is hard, everything beyond this point is what they were talking about. So the objective once you collect enough cocoa and activate the tower is to climb said tower to complete the time trial. But the process of getting to the trial on top of the tower is a trial in and of itself. More specifically, towers 1 and 2. For some odd reason, the other towers after this are really not that difficult. Not exactly a cakewalk, but manageable. But let's go into specifically what I'm talking about here. Someone at Sonic Team must have really not liked the fact that fans said that the game was too easy. So what did they do? They said, "F you," and that's the best way I can describe this level design. This whole time I was playing it, it just felt like I was playing a Kaizo level that doesn't really test my skills, but tests my patience. It's not designed to help you, it's designed to trick you. It's not designed to make you laugh, it's designed to make you scream.
Oh,
And it's certainly not designed to keep you playing. It's designed to make you go outside. You know that game Getting Over It? It's literally just like that. But alright, allow me to explain. The higher you go up the tower, the more precarious your movements have to be. Platforms start getting smaller, platforms start getting more specific, platforms start tilting, making it easier for Sonic to slip and fall. And it also requires a lot of fast reflexes or you'll fall. And if you fall, there's no crane to bring you back up to where you were. If you fall, you fall. And you would need to do it all over again. Like I said, it's a test of patience. But you know what? I love it. Yeah, you heard me. I thought it was fun and really funny for some reason. Well, this was really hard. Don't get me wrong, it was. You guys seen my stream. And yes, I do think it is cheap. I do think that was kind of the point. Like, it's testing your skills and it took all of my skills to get through it. I've seen a lot of people giving this part of the DLC a lot of flack, and I'm not saying it's not deserved, but allow me to give you some tips. If you're going to fall, don't just sit there and watch it happen. Hold the parry buttons and stop Sonic in the air. Reevaluate your position and try to fall back on the nearest path or homing attack to the nearest spring or zip line. And don't forget to air dash when necessary. I can't tell you how many times I saw people online complaining about a specific section that they failed. And almost all the times I've watched this, they could have easily saved themselves from having to do the whole tower over again, had they just fully utilized Sonic's moveset. But there's also a very important piece that a lot of people online seem to have forgot. Everything I'm mentioning in this review so far is assuming you're playing the game on hard mode. If this type of thing is too hard for you and you're genuinely not having a good time, you could easily switch the difficulty back to easy mode in the menu, where there will now be balloons you can homing attack to help you get up to the top of the tower. Is this level design I want to see in all my Sonic games? No, of course not. But for what it is, a test of skill and an obstacle course, it's not going to be for everyone. But I truly thought it was fun to try to beat, and I did. But now let's go over the actual time trials at the top of the towers. And this is where it is blatantly obvious they messed up during development and put these towers in the wrong order, because like I said with the obstacles, to get there, the first and second tower for some reason is the hardest out of all 5. Everything after gets so much easier and it's so odd. The first challenge is fighting super fast enemies with Sonic at level 1 stats. Nothing too crazy, your biggest enemy here is the clock, so make sure you're utilizing all of Sonic's combat skills. The second challenge, arguably, is the hardest in the DLC. This one took forever for me to get it right. This one requires a very specific technique to pass, or you will run out of time. If you look at my footage here, you will see that this is how you're intended to actually beat it. And I won't lie, this one did feel cheap, and the solution felt way too specific. It took me a while to beat this, and I had 1,200 people in my chat yelling at me the solution, so I can see a lot of people getting stuck here at this challenge. Challenge 3 is literally a joke, and challenge 4 requires a good amount of skill to, fight the enemy, but again, you have all the time in the world to figure it out, so it's really not that difficult. If I was in charge, the order of these towers should have been 4, 3, 1, then 2. That would have made the difficulty get progressively harder. Again, I really do think they messed up during development here. I do want to compliment them on one thing though. If you all notice something, these aren't just random challenges. They are training you to keep doing one specific move, the parry. And the enemies being at triple the speed, even if you have the ability to hold the parry as long as you want, you still have to kind of time it in between attacks. This is clearly by design, and you're going to need this skill because when you get to Tower 5, you're going to meet the Master King Coco, the one who can convert your corrupted cyber energy into power. But for him to give you this move, you must first complete his trial, which consists of...
I didn't even see it. I didn't see it. Oh, God. Harry, the tail one is going to be the enemy. I f***ed up. Why did I do that? It f***ing hurts my soul every f***ing time. I know it's over! I'm trying to practice! Give me a missile. Give me a missile. You. I'm choking. This is it. I'm eating my mic.
Ladies and gentlemen, this game taught me to be careful for what I wish for. If you recall in my review in Frontiers, I didn't like that you can hold the parry indefinitely. It made fights too easy, and it made Titan fights like the one against the Wyvern unexciting. Well, Sonic Team kind of listened and decided to give us something called the perfect parry. Just like in any Dark Souls game, you can no longer just hold the parry, you need to properly time it, which is great. But this parry isn't even a second long. Hell, it isn't even half a second long. On hard mode, this thing is damn near frame perfect. And if that wasn't already challenging enough, you must beat Giganto, Wyvern, and Knight all with just 400 rings that don't replenish with a level 1 Sonic using only the perfect parry. Against Giganto? Fine. Against Knight? A little challenging, but I could do it. Against Wyvern? F*** you, this fight was the hardest thing I ever had to do in any Sonic game. I'm not kidding. It is right up there with Lancelot Returns from Black Knight. Unlike the other Titans, you can't just attack Wyvern. You have to parry him before you can attack. If you mess up, you have to wait another cycle to get another chance. But with your rings constantly counting down slowly, it's a race against the clock. Hard mode in this challenge was insane. I can't even imagine what this is like in extreme mode. I don't think I'm ever even gonna try it. Don't get me wrong, I like the idea of having to time the parry in combat. It keeps the player engaged and it feels satisfying to pull off. Playing this on normal mode is a bit more relaxing of an experience, but I think it is a little bit too easy. If we had something in the middle between hard mode and normal mode, I think it would be perfect. But I do wish for future games, the enemies and bosses do have better telegraphing when they're about to attack, because attacks like the tail attack from Wyvern can be damn near impossible to predict. After taking a few years off of your lifespan, you finally complete the challenge. Master King warned you not to go all out with your new power, because if you do, it can leave you defenseless. With Sonic having learned the new power from the Master King and learning how to perform the perfect parry, you can now fight the new final boss in Sonic Frontiers' Final Horizons update. Once you fight and beat Supreme just like before, the end appears in the sky directly over Supreme, which by the way is a super awesome visual. It directly links itself to Supreme this time to use it as an avatar. And just like that, you have a brand new fight on your hands. And when the fight starts, you'll immediately notice you can't parry any of the attacks being thrown at you. This is when Sonic transforms into his new super form, Super Sonic 2. Which by the way, looks very similar to Super Sonic, with the only real difference being his eye color. I won't lie, I wouldn't have minded a bit more of a color variation here, so the form is a bit more obvious. Regardless, Sonic is now able to perform the perfect parry, which can deflect any attack being thrown at him, unlike before. And now the fight truly begins properly. This fight is a lot different from the Supreme fight, and you could tell the team really wanted to up the difficulty here. As you start to attack Supreme, you'll notice that there's these projectiles being shot at you. You're going to want to have to parry these as they come your way every single time they come your way, or they're going to hit you and knock you back. As you continue to fight though, you'll also notice the health bar is regenning very slowly. This is your hint to take out the wire connecting Supreme to the end. I'm going to pause right here because I think this is probably the fight's biggest flaw. Nothing really tells you that you can attack the wire because Sonic auto-locks his head first. To attack the wire, you need to tap one of the shoulder buttons to automatically maneuver around his head to the wire. This move is almost never utilized in Sonic Frontiers. The only time I ever remember doing this is going against Knight to avoid his shield, and the only way I found out about it during that fight was by accident when I was mashing buttons. Point is, while I do think this move is cool, I think it is way too situational for a player to figure this out on their own. I know we like to harp on Sonic's friends for, never shutting up during a final boss fight, but I genuinely think this is probably the one time I wouldn't have minded someone like, say, Sage telling Sonic to dash around the head to attack the wire first, or something, I don't know. The only reason I figured this out was because I accidentally pulled it off the first time and I didn't know how I did that. Again, not a big deal, but an indicator would have been nice. I did hear that Master King himself will give you hints on how to defeat the boss if you go back to him, but I do feel like that's really random. I would have liked the hints to be in the fight itself. Once you attack the wire and attack Supreme enough, you'll see him fall to the ground. Once this happens, you need to quick salute the gun on his back. Again, there really is no indicator to do this, I just kind of had to figure it out via trial and error. Once you salute the gun again, a surprising turn of events happens. Eggman takes control of the gun. The End tries to attack Eggman, but he's thankfully protected by Sage and Sonic's friends who can fly now? Okay. I mean, it looks cool, so I'll allow it. This is where the fight takes a turn. You need to take out the wire and attack the Titan again before he wipes out your friends. Can I just say how awesome the visuals are for this boss fight, by the way? Even though Super Sonic 2's visuals aren't that different from Super Sonic, his demeanor very much is. The best way I can describe it is that he's literally Vegeta now. But you know what? I'm here for it. You can tell the team was really having fun with some of these poses, and I really like them. I would like to see more stuff like this. After dealing enough damage, Sonic and Eggman work together to take out the End. Sonic enters the gun, but before going all Sonic X and Cosmoing the End to death, Sonic ends up going all out, releasing his new power contrary to what the Master King says. Here we get probably one of the best visuals ever for Sonic, where Sonic lets loose his cyber power. While this is happening, and with careful aiming by Eggman, he fires Cyber Supersonic at both Supreme and the End, where we only get a brief moment to appreciate Cybersonic's cool new design. Which, by the way, I really like it. Those Fleetway Supersonic eyes and the sharp teeth look really cool. All before Sonic absolutely obliterates Supreme and goes right through the End. It explodes in glorious fashion. Now that was a final boss fight. This fight absolutely blows the old one out of the water. While there were some parts that could have been better explained, I think this one was hard enough and had some amazing spectacle to really make it something that will be remembered for a long time. In fact, this is probably one of my favorite 3D boss fights in Sonic history. I really liked it. And that is everything from the Final Horizons update. My overall thoughts about it is, it's good. It's a positive. I know a lot could have been better, and I know this whole update is plagued with jank. That is true. Is everything in here exactly what I want in my Sonic games? No. You can tell a lot of what's in here was rushed. Hell, it's even obvious in some of the character interactions where Tails literally refers to Sonic while he's talking to Sonic.
It seems the tower only reacts to Sonic.
Huh. So I'm the only one who can activate them.
What?
The player movements being bugged is pretty bad, and the level design being a lot of random assets merged together to create some form of a new path is a bit jarring and not really polished, all made worse by the pop and just being absolutely abysmal. But I could still appreciate them for going as far as they did, and throughout all the jank, I still found enjoyment, and that's what's important to me. If this was a paid DLC, trust me, I would be tearing a lot of what's in here a new one. But I really appreciate them for doing this. I know some people online really didn't like this update and tried saying this DLC somehow ruined the game. First off, no, that is absolutely bullshit. This update is 100% optional. If you don't want to play it, you don't have to go through the giant ring in the beginning. And if you do want to play it but you feel like the difficulty is too high, you can lower the difficulty. I'll say it one last time. This DLC clearly wasn't planned, and in the end, for a free update for a game that came out a year ago, this is unheard of for a Sonic game. Jank or not, being able to play as Sonic's friends again was a treat. Think back to how this game started a year ago. Look at how much has changed since then. And they added new characters on top of that? That's commendable. And I hope the feedback from this update can be used so when these guys get added to future games, they can be brought back in a way better than they were here. In fact, that's where I'm gonna leave off this video. Everything I played in this update, of course, can be done way better. And I hope the feedback they get from this DLC will be used to make the next game the best it could be. And I hope that feedback that they hear is that we like what they're doing, we like Sonic's friends being in the game, and we like there to be challenge. But obviously there needs to be polish along the way. But for what it is, a free optional update in this game, thank you, Sonic Team. And thank you to everyone who stuck by me for this game. This channel grew so much leading up to this game, and having this community means the world to me. Being able to experience stuff like this with all of you and talk about the future of Sonic because of this title is everything to me. This game added so much lore, so much content, and so much things to look forward to that I'm just happy I get to talk about that type of stuff again. And it's all thanks to Sonic Frontiers. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and I'll see you guys all for Sonic Superstars. See you later, procrastinators.